The GCC has long dominated the global hydrocarbon market and continues to play a critical role in shaping the direction of the industry. With its vast oil and gas reserves, the GCC remains well placed to power both the upstream and downstream sector and set the agenda for a greater push towards cleaner energy adoption locally, regionally, and globally. The story of oil in the Middle East is not a contemporary tale, but began a long time ago. The first oil discovery in the region was in 1931 at an oil well in the remote Jebel Dukhan area of Bahrain. Soon, one by one, each of the other GCC countries made their own discoveries, paving the way towards a radical transformation across the region. And then in 2016, a new regional initiative was undertaken to further strengthen the association of these countries, and Bahrain was chosen as its headquarters due to the kingdom's strategic location. The Gulf Downstream Association, or GDA, was founded by Saudi Aramco, Bahrain Petroleum Company, Kuwait Petroleum International, Kuwait National Petroleum Company, and Abu Dhabi National Oil Company as a non-profit organization that will serve as a catalyst for strong and sustainable growth of the downstream industry and provide a viable platform for knowledge sharing and best practice.
The idea of GDA started a few years back, mainly to promote the cooperation and the coordination between the oil industries in the downstream field to ensure that we have a vehicle within the GCC to share practices, share lessons learned.
The Gulf Downstream Association, it's bring a lot of experience of industry. We are focusing into bringing these experience together and putting these company into the perspective and its real position in the oil and gas industry.
GDA's formation provides the springboard for effective partnerships across the region that will build on the strengths of each member organization in preparing a world-class workforce that can meet the challenges of tomorrow. And most crucially, help in creating a voice for the region on international platforms by being innovative, by creating a knowledge hub, and serving as a reference point for all stakeholders.
Our approach is very simple. If I have an area of excellence that I've excelled in, then it only makes sense that among the different companies within the GCC that we will be able to share and all of us excelling at the same time.
The key to GDA's long-term success will be the values that guide its operations, as well as the main propositions that drive its appeal.
Year 2018, we are looking to develop other conferences that will add value to our founding companies and members.
Members have access to a rich repository of valuable information through GDA's very own portal, possibility to attend or opportunity to conduct industry-related technical or leadership events, share knowledge and experience and adopt best practice to pave the way for greater sustainability that includes tapping the invaluable expertise of the senior transitional workforce, enhance communication between members to help foster good relations with global industries and associations, provide a voice for members to strengthen the three pillars of strategy: industry, government, and education.
GDA will provide for us an excellent forum to achieve operational excellence in our respective companies in areas like maintenance efficiency, personal efficiency, energy efficiency, as well as capital efficiency and project execution.
The GDA is starting with the Arabian Gulf, of course, but we are also starting big and we're already interacting with all the multinationals. And the technologies are really going to be an important part of our membership portfolio, the EPC as well. And this is where we feel our strength is, by getting the stakeholders together, networking, identifying the business and technical challenges.
GDA is poised to be the perfect platform for future generations in the GCC. For the youth in the oil, gas and refining sector, it will prepare them for tomorrow's challenges, as well as help them manage the daily hectic demands of this innovative and rewarding industry. The choice is now in our hands. Opportunities are all around us, and together with the GDA, we can create a stronger and more sustainable downstream industry. GDA, share and excel.
Hello and welcome to GDA Conversations, brought to you by Gulf Downstream Association. GDA Conversation is a series in which we talk to the industry leaders and expertise of the downstream industry. We have seen that while we are not able to meet physically and personally, virtually we can do a lot of exchange of knowledge. And that's the purpose of this series. And through these conversations, we are trying to bridge the gaps of knowledge between all the downstream players. My name is Raj Hajaria. I'm Technical Manager with Gulf Downstream Association. And my guest today is Rob Howard. He is the Vice President of MENA Region in the AspenTech. He is a chemical engineer with a 35 plus years of experience in the oil and gas, refining and petrochemical. He started his career with ExxonMobil, where he stayed for 10 years, and then he has been with AspenTech for the last 25 years. His specialty is in improving plant operations through a tool called Aspen One, and perhaps we will hear more about it during his talk. Rob has chosen today a very interesting topic: how to manage petroleum supply chain in today's VUCA environment. As you know, this VUCA term was introduced by US Army College in 1987, if I am not mistaken. Perhaps Rob can correct me. And today, this term is so widely used, especially in the context of current COVID-19 crisis, that there is nothing which is certain, nothing which can be predicted, everything is VUCA. So how do we work in this VUCA environment? And how do we still continue to be profitable in this VUCA environment? That's the subject Rob is going to take, and we are all eager to hear his views and hope we will take away some valuable tips from this talk. So without further ado, let me welcome Rob.
Thanks very much, Raj. It's good to see you and everybody again. Hopefully it won't be too many more weeks or months before we can meet in person, but it's always nice to be engaged with your great organization, GDA, and thank you very much to Auda for the opportunity as well to speak to you all today. Looking forward to it very much.
Right. So, Rob, would you like to start with some overview presentation to share your thoughts on this topic and how we can handle the situation? And then perhaps we can go over to some specific questions.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah. So everyone, I've put together just 10 slides, which will take 5 or 10 minutes to go through to just set the scene and introduce the topic that we'll discuss in more detail. So I hope you find it useful and interesting. Okay, so the overall subject, we've talked about managing the supply chain in today's VUCA environment. And exactly like you said, Raj, this was a term introduced by the US military in the mid-80s because they were starting to fight wars that were not the conventional war where you knew where your enemy was and you could plan properly ahead on what you were going to do. So VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And in today's environment, we see this as an extremely fitting description of the business and operational challenges that we're seeing in the downstream industry. I think we all know that 2020 is going to be a year we're going to remember for centuries, probably, in our civilization. And what it has done in the oil industry in particular, apart from obviously the COVID impact worldwide, is to introduce the most extreme demand, complexity, and volatility that we've ever seen, much more than any of the previous oil shocks. And I'm sure all of us on the call today are spending a lot of time responding to these challenges. In terms of the ambiguity, one of the problems is you just don't know what is a good decision to make. There's so many pros and cons, and everything's changing so quickly that you need to be really very much aware of what's going on. So to just expand on those views, if we look at volatility, I mean, demand has dropped between 20 and 30% over the last 3 to 6 months. And who knows what the price of oil is going to be. It even went negative for a few days, if we remember, and people thought that was an impossibility. But the expectation is it's going to be in this range over the coming year. But as we all know, we're in this long-term energy transition where there's going to be alternative energy over the next 40 years. Even though oil is undoubtedly going to grow, there's going to be lots of competition from other areas. Sustainability is driving everything. We all know about IMO regulations. Those have had a huge impact on the downstream this year. And many refiners have found out the hard way that they're not ready for these new low sulfur specs that have come in. We're well aware of the skills challenges we have with new engineers, and the old gray-haired ones like myself, due to retire in not too many years, we hope. Then technology, that is what's really driving things in my view. This industrial 4.0 and the extreme digitalization that we're seeing is what's really challenging all of us. So if we move forward to how we're going to respond, the objective is to accelerate what we are already doing to ensure that we can run our assets, as we call in this order, safer. That's always number one. Greener, meeting all these new specifications. Longer, and lastly, faster, which means more optimal or more profitably. So there's a big challenge as well with the remote workforce. All of us are on this meeting remotely today, and it's just going to continue. We have to find better ways of engaging and collaborating. So if we turn more specifically to planning, many of you who are in the planning area will see these questions on the right, or these situations, is what's driving your decisions daily. Very volatile pricing. And what I find very interesting is this comment about models not calibrated for turndown rates. We all know that yields and efficiencies are much worse at lower throughputs. So your models need to be updated and calibrated to make sure that they're representing what's going on in your plants as it is today. And so to make these improved, or to make good planning decisions in this very tough environment, you need solutions that are going to be able to respond very agilely to what's going on. Not only have the prices available, but automated and being fed into your planning systems with very high frequency. You need to be doing a lot more scenario analysis, looking at and solving larger baskets of crudes, identifying operations. This is going to be helped with things like cloud computing, and analyzing the results from all these planning analyses that you run is going to need sophisticated analysis tools, and overall increasing the accuracy of your planning process requires calibration of all your models on a much more frequent basis. So one of the very interesting ideas that we're looking at is, plants have been planned for decades. So there's always many past examples of planning models that are stored on your hard drive somewhere. And all of these planning models have multiple, we call them features, but these are parameters, throughputs, yields, qualities. So with all these 5,000 variables, what's the best way of ensuring that your new planning is going to be as good as your past planning? So what we're using is this concept called cognitive guidance, where we'll start to use AI to classify the past good planning models that you've had and cluster them across different scenarios. Like you might have had a HDS plant that was shut down. So how do you plan and run your plant in those scenarios? Or you've clearly got difference in the Middle East between winter and summer operation. So you can start to mine this data that you have to identify the best models, the best planning models that you used in the past, to train the less experienced new planners how to do the job properly. So the next part is tying the planning right down into the operations of the plant. And a key part of this is what we would call unifying the production optimization. And some technology that has just recently come onto the market enables you to close the loop directly between your planning and your advanced process control, operating on a minute-by-minute basis. This dynamic optimization is fundamentally going to change the way in which we can respond to the VUCA environment that we're in. You can replan and start executing immediately. So this is all within what we call optimization, driving the smart enterprise. And the three pillars are the design. You design your plant once or debottleneck it frequently, operating it, running it to the limits of its performance, and most crucially, maintaining the plant in the maximum uptime possible. That's where the next level of benefit is to be driven. So AspenTech looks at things across the entire supply chain in three sort of areas. Along the bottom, you can see design, operate, and maintain. But design is really about two types. It's the plant digital twin, which is the real-time twin of the plant as it's operating. And obviously the designing and debottlenecking is something that's done more periodically. But tying those two together in what we call performance engineering is crucial to elevating your overall performance. Production optimization ties planning, scheduling, controlling, optimizing, and the MES functions of monitor and execute. And on the right-hand side, you can see the reliability. First is assessing reliability, making sure that you are designed your plant to be reliable enough with the right redundancy. And then it's monitoring all that equipment real time to avoid unplanned downtime through what we call prescriptive maintenance. These are analytics that are looking real time at all the operational data to identify trends. And then you see the blue arrow transcending through the picture there is the value chain. So you need to ensure that you are making products according to the supply or the demand that you are identifying, and then producing to that demand and distributing on the bottom right-hand side. And this entire set of technologies needs to be cloud-enabled, using the latest data analytics, and it's what we call industrial AI infrastructure. So this has to enable collaboration and insights, you need to have all of these solutions working together. The phrase that we coining of industrial AI is to ensure that you're taking the data and using techniques that are freely available, such as machine learning, advanced analytics, but marrying that with domain expertise. That's the important thing. And engineering industries, particularly downstream, is very conservative. We want to make sure that safety is number one, and that means you have to have an absolute 100% guarantee that funny things are not going to happen on your plant. And that's where the domain expertise married with these insights becomes what we call industrially hardened AI. And the next phase in this journey is we talk about the self-optimizing plant. So as we bring this technology together and your planning is cycles speed up, you'll be able to get to the stage where the plant is adapting itself and doing autonomously most of these engineering, optimization, and reliability tasks. And that will work into the overall plant within the enterprise, connecting to the value chain. And here the key points are ensuring collaboration, user experience, and cloud computing. And the final step in the journey is if you've got multiple plants, like the very large companies we have in the Middle East, they will all be cooperating together, so you end up delivering the overall smart enterprise. So that's just a very quick overview, Raj and team, of the setting the context. I hope you found that interesting. I guess now we'll move on to some discussion.
Thank you very much. It was a very nice overview in a short period of time. I think you have given us a helicopter view of what is available to cope with this VUCA environment. Now, if I may ask a few generic questions before I open the floor for our subject matter experts, and we have many of them from our different technical committees, and we are really thankful to them for joining. How, in your opinion, during these last 4 months of the crisis, you think the refiners have actually responded to the crisis? Do you have any view?
Yeah, well, we've seen, particularly in the Middle East region, tremendously good response overall, but very challenging. And it varies between the different players. Clearly, those who had already pre-invested in solutions and technology made them ready, better prepared for this disruption than many others. I think also that there was an impact that started hitting before the COVID. Obviously, we all aware of the IMO regulations that started in January. So that immediately put many refiners on the back foot. And to be honest, I was quite surprised how ill-prepared a number of major operators were for the impact that this was going to have. Some of them had pre-invested the last few years already in extra sulfur rejection capabilities, but others were a bit slow. So that was already impacting many operators. And then we had the additional shock of the demand destruction as COVID started impacting particularly the need for jet, and the swing that customers had to make very quickly out of certain products like jet into more diesel or more petrochemical feedstock, on top of just reducing throughput. I think we all know that most of the refineries were running at the 50% throughput mark, and many still are. In fact, worldwide, we're starting to see many of the majors look at closing down refineries permanently. Well, at least temporarily, but often that becomes permanently, because the efficiency factor of running assets at 80-90% throughput compared to 50 is so big that the additional cost is just not worth it. And this is also going to have an impact on people. We've all seen there's been significant layoffs, certainly in our region. Obviously, there's a big demographic shift going on. So all these factors together have made the last three to 4 months extremely difficult. But there are winners and losers in all these situations. And it's very interesting to see the response of leaders in these companies. Some of them are using this as a real opportunity to speed up some of their investments and address these issues.
Right. I also hear that some of the people are converting to biofuel feed for the refineries. I know that Philips have done in, I think, somewhere in America or in America, and some other refiners are also switching over. What do you think about that?
Well, that's just a sign of the times. I mean, if you look at the overall energy footprint, I think there's a lot of debate still around whether that is necessarily a net positive. But from a political and commercial viewpoint, there's a lot of incentives for people in those areas still. It might be twisting the economics a little bit, but oil companies are going to respond in the way that they find is going to maximize their profitability, and so therefore those sorts of changes are not going to be uncommon going forward.
So what do you think, in your opinion, should be the prerequisite for the refiners to be able to handle this product mix which is happening? Like people need to produce more diesel and gasoline, or even the fuel oil as compared to the kerosene, jet fuel. And also, as you said, olefin feedstock for the petrochemical. So what do you think are the prerequisites for the refiner to manage it?
Yeah, very, very good question and very topical, Raj. What we see is that the number one factor that is determining overall operations is your general throughput. So because overall all demands are down, what that means is that the response of the plant and the accuracy of the prediction of what it will be produced based on the crude mix you're putting in is going to be much less at reduced throughput. So number one, everyone needs to be updating their planning models and making sure that they are fully representative of the current operating environment. So that means significant investment in making sure that your digital twin, your process models are particularly on your kinetic, on your reactors, are accurate, making sure that your catalyst is appropriately being represented in your models, and that your operation, as you change the different feed mixes to the different plants, can predict, number one, where you're going to be, and secondly, have the planning tool that is flexible enough to handle the wide variation that you're going to need to be putting into your plant. So bringing those two together and the ability to run multiple scenarios, your optimization is going to be in a different place to where most people intuitively think it is. Operations people are dyed-in-the-wool people. They think they know where the plant should be running most of the time, and they're pretty much accurate based on past experience. But now it's a whole new environment. So, swinging cuts away from the jet region is going to make your blending more complicated to get your gasoline and diesels on spec, maximizing the yields at your reduced throughputs. And again, energy, the cost of energy overall is going to go up per barrel of finished product. And you need to be making sure that you've got all those economics correctly captured and analyzed.
If I can touch on the point you mentioned that the efficiency of 80-85% is what probably we look forward to, but at the current speed where it is 50%, it is probably not profitable and they are closing down the refinery. There is another view I heard from an expert that going forward, if the demand continues to be low and price also continue to be low for the crude oil, then even then the product price will not be able to go down because of the fixed asset investment already made. Do you have any view on that?
Yeah, well, this is where there's going to be winners and losers, because one thing's for sure, we're still going to need to consume the products. So the question is, who are the people who are going to be supplying it to us? And when you get to negative margins, you can maintain that for a certain period of time, but then difficult decisions have to get made that if you've got 2 refineries running at 50% throughput, rather have one of those shut down and the other one running close to 100, and then recover the fixed costs that refinery is going to be adding in. So it's a very, very hard set of economic decisions. And remember, it's not just the companies themselves. Most of the time here in the Middle East, we're operating, with national oil companies. They've got other charters as well. You can't just suddenly shut down and make large numbers of people unemployed. It impacts your economy. There's knock-on effects. So I think there's a very complex set of factors that will be taken into account. But in the short term, yes, profitability is down. We've all just seen the Saudi Aramco results that were published this last week, down 75% on what they were previously. They're still making money at least, but there's a huge change, and it's not going away quickly. I think this COVID impact is certainly going to be very significant for the next 3 to 6 months before things start getting back. Well, they will never get back to normal. This is a new normal that we're in.
What else do you forecast in the future? What do you see in your crystal ball?
Well, if anyone can forecast the future, that would be very brave of them. As people say, the future isn't what it used to be. So, no, I think, just like I said earlier, we're in the middle of this, incredible situation with COVID impacting the world, and that's clearly going to continue. But remember, we are still going to need products as a society. While the transport industry is going through a transition, what is undoubtedly going to remain and grow is the need for plastics and rubbers and the more petrochemicals derivatives from the hydrocarbon resources we have. So that is going to grow, and I think we are seeing the mega integrated crude to chemicals projects. Some of them have gone on hold a little bit the last few years, but there's no doubt that the long-term future is to monetize these assets through those value chains. We obviously saw, Aramco and SABIC have now completed their merger. We see KIPIC coming online. There's going to be very big integrated projects in the UAE. It's same in Qatar. So, but particularly it's going to be driven largely by Saudi Arabia, and there is going to be a bigger transition and integration into the petrochemicals space over the next 5 to 10 years. That's where the mega investment will be going.
Do you have any suggestions on the steps people can take to minimize or optimize their operating expenses in the current situation?
Yeah, well, certainly that's what everybody is and should be focused on. I think, the other trend which is going along with the investment trend is this digitalization wave that we see going on right now. I mean, it started 1 to 2 years ago, you can argue, in earnest, but it's been going on for 40 years, since the first DCS system was implemented just as I was leaving university. It's been a non-stop digitalization journey. It's just speeding up now, in particular because, the IT and OT technologies powered by AI are making new things possible. So I think that the investment that refiners can make in technologies that empower an industrial version of AI married with expertise and domain knowledge is what can really change the lever within refineries nowadays. In particular, things like reduced maintenance with fewer people on the site. it's harder to do routine maintenance like some heat exchanger cleaning. So you need to be monitoring your fouling on your exchanges that much better and predicting when is the optimum time to take something offline and get the most out of any maintenance you do. So solutions like predictive analytics and online modeling, having digital twins that can give alerts and predict when something is going to need to be cleaned or modified, that's going to drive a lot of the discussion, a lot of the activities on a refinery.
The digitalization is the way forward. There are views that still the AI is not at the level of maturity where you can say that we can deal with them as if we are dealing with the expert of 40 plus years. One thing is that we have to realize that no matter what we call it, AI or whatever, AR or whatever, they are all based on algorithm, and algorithms are written by people with some experience. How much do you think domain experience they have who are writing this algorithm, and how much can you query those AI decisions? For example, if a person takes a decision, you can go and ask him, why did you take this decision? Can you do that with AI decision?
Yeah, very good point. And I think this is what separates the men from the boys when it comes to using this technology in an industrial environment. Anyone can start an AI operation. You can download the AI toolbox for free from Google, TensorFlow. What's happening is there's like well over 1,000 companies saying they can do AI. But really, it's a lot more than a data scientist or a clever engineer trying to correlate data. If you don't understand what that data means and know how to clean it and know how to use it appropriately, you're going to get very spurious results. And that's what we've seen many times already. So our approach is to make sure to look at the problem from the domain side. We're chemical engineers in the end, and we're dealing with molecules that we know what they do. There's no uncertainty about how things behave. What there is uncertainty is about some of the measurement criteria, the data, collecting things consistently. And we've had 40 years of dealing with plant data, how to cleanse it, how to manipulate it, what we call data wrangling, how to correlate the data correctly, and then finally use the analytics part of machine learning to add an extra layer. But fundamentally, it's got to be rooted within the fundamental physics and chemistry that are the rules that are driving everything that's going on. So this is why we talk about industrial AI. That's the key part behind this. Technology that you can understand why. We talk about hybrid modeling, where you can have a first principles model, which is very rigorous and accurate, but it needs a lot of data. Now, some of that data you can collect from your plant directly. So it's merging the fundamental physicochemical, kinetic modeling together with the data that gives us this ability to do a higher level analysis. And that's where I think AI is going to really, be very prominent going forward.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for all these illustration and clarification to my questions. Now I would like to open the floor for our subject matter experts from various technical committees. I can see we have 23 participants. Who would like to go with the question first? Yes, Abu Tarek.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks to all of you for participating in GDA conversation. Thank you, Rob, for a well-done overview and nice discussion on this, ambiguity and volatility, supply chain. Now, with so many high technical, aspects like artificial intelligence, machine learning, industrial revolution, and so on and so forth. Do we have, as refiners, the capability to run these technology, and we have the expertise in-house?
Well, I think Ada, that's a very, very relevant and astute observation, which maybe I was wrong to not comment on earlier. Artificial intelligence is great, but some human intelligence for starters will take us a long way. And part of that is the training of our engineers, particularly our younger generation, to be able to, just to keep these plants running, number one, before we optimize them. So I think the importance of skills training, technical training, and the sorts of activities that GDA are facilitating across the region are absolutely critical to the future of our industry here. This is a complex industry. It takes many, many years and decades to train people to be able to run and manage these plants efficiently. And my biggest concern is that as a profession and as a industry, we are just not doing enough to prepare the next generations to continue this. The AI is going to help, but it has to be within a solid context of knowledge and skills and experience that people will have to use it within. So I fully agree with you. I don't think we are fully prepared.
Rob, when do you think our product demands will come back to pre-COVID-19? Do you think beginning of 2021?
I'm sure we will be making good progress by then, but I don't think there's a big debate going on. Will we ever get back to the 100 million barrels a day that we were consuming just before? It'll get close to it, I think, and ultimately over many years, consumption will continue, but whether it's going to jump back to the full amount, I somehow doubt it. And who knows, it might even be July next year. If we have a big second spike over the winter, over the northern winter that is, people are just not going to be traveling. And I think that itself is a big impact. That's 10% of overall demand. So, yeah, we're in for the long run here.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Tarek. I think we have a question from Mahmoud from Air Liquid.
Thank you, Raj, for giving me the opportunity. Thank you, Rob, for your presentation. Rob, during your presentation, your slides, you spoke about the digital twin and online modeling. Considering that we are all enter this unpredicted condition for the COVID-19, unprepared with the transformation or with the digital transformation. Most of the company has no the necessary infrastructure to run and to build digital transformation for their own business. So from your point of view, how can companies expedite the digital transformation built up in their system?
Very good point. I think everyone's at a different level of maturity along this journey. So the phrases that we talk about are, number one, establishing very quickly a roadmap, doing a sort of master plan of where you are today in terms of your maturity levels across these different technology areas, and then working with your own plant and with consultants to understand what is the most appropriate and cost-effective journey for yourselves to do. I think one of the problems we see many companies doing is trying to jump to the full digitalization immediately. Remember, this is a journey that's going to take time. And what's absolutely critical is that you have quick wins, early projects that you can deploy quickly and everybody can see the benefit of it. Then that builds the confidence for the next projects. There's nothing worse for an operating plant for some external peoples to come in, put in some system that initially is working, and then as soon as they leave or one or two key people change their jobs, these solutions just don't work anymore. And it's not the solution's fault. It's because we as management haven't put in place the training and the transitions needed to sustain these solutions. So it's identifying your highest return investments, and obviously those are closer to the plant. I mean, the most obvious one is if you don't have the latest generation type of advanced process controls driving your plant at the lowest level, that's I would call that a no-brainer. Those have such high returns that you just must have those and maintain them. What this requires as well, see, most of us on this call are technically qualified and working in these plants, but we need our management and our executive management to really champion these technologies and support those in the team in the plant to enable them to really sustain these applications. It requires training, a lot of online learning, e-learning, certification. We have to constantly ensure that any new solutions have people who can maintain them in the long term.
Training should not be targeted for reducing the operating expense. Even in the current situation, it is essential for people to keep continuing their path on learning and developing the competence.
Absolutely, that's critical. And I think, the work that GDA is doing to try and promote that, it's training and it's best practices. I think all the technical committees, it's lifelong learning. I mean, the thought that training is an expense item, it's an investment. It's the future of your company to make sure that every engineer is constantly developing their skills, updating them. Things change quickly, and particularly it's about collaboration and cooperation. Those are skills that people need as well. Understanding that across the company, how the different functions work together and need to work together to get the best out of a plant.
Hi, Raj and Rob. This is Saif. Rob, thank you for the great presentation. I just wanted you to shed some light on one challenge with the young breed of engineers, which we see in the Middle East and North Africa, MENA region joining. They're joining the workforce during this digital transformation period, as well as the challenges with the oil and gas industry. Sometimes what we see in the industry is that a lot of they want to look at all these data-driven technologies as starters. Sometimes they neglect the first principles, understanding of these things. As you said, separating the men from the boys. What is your advice to these young breed of engineers who are joining within the local, communities from the different GCC countries?
Yeah, it's a very good observation, Saif, and I think we do see a lot of that, where some engineers think there's a shortcut. Everything can be done by just looking at some data. Well, the reality is there's no shortcut to experience. Engineers have to be engineers on plants, understand that it's not just a computer simulation that they might have spent most of their university careers working on, that they have to fully understand the context within which this data comes from, because that's the big challenge. Like they say, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. You got to be very careful with looking at data if you're not looking at it within the right context. And there have been some very funny experiences that I've had over the years where people will take this data and correlate it. And then you just point out that actually that temperature indicator was faulty and it was flatlining for the last 2 years. And that's why they've got this very unusual correlation that they think is correct. But the fundamental thing is the data was not right. And we all know of the challenges of instrumentation on refineries, let alone the data side of it. So yeah, the message to these young engineers is they've got to get a broader experience of real operations and understand, sit in the control room with those operators and see how you have to respond to things. Get that real experience under your belt before trying to, shortcut things and optimize without understanding how to operate.
And also, Rob, the length of, the duration for getting this experience can be shortened with the digital tools which you have described and also are available. So one doesn't need to probably spend same amount of time, same length of time to gain that much experience, perhaps. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this new technology can speed up things completely. Operator training systems or just dynamic simulations can train people much, much quicker. So, it's not to say we shouldn't be doing these, but we also have to marry it with, the reality of how I like to say, oil on my boots. If you've never had oil on your boots or crawled around a real plant, there's a lot of basic craft or knowledge about our industry that you'll be missing. And that's important for people to realize that they need that. The other part, Raj, that I always say to young engineers, I mentor quite a few of them, I say, as a young engineer, you can get experience very quickly if you want. You can get 3 years of experience in 1 year, provided you work hard enough. It's a tough industry, but if we work hard and smart, you can learn a lot in a short amount of time. It's really the attitude with which individuals approach their work. They have to have a thirst for acquiring new knowledge, and they have to be excited about it. And self-driven. No one is going to come and put on a plate your entire career for you. You've got to go out there and train yourself. With the internet nowadays and Googling things, I saw a quote the other day that I thought was very, very good. It says, the shame is not if you don't know something. The shame is that if you don't go and find out about it. So that's an important message.
Very well said, Rob. We have a question from our colleague Wafa from Kipik. And her question is, I was wondering if we want to stay optimistic with refineries closing down, more digitalization, more integration with petchem, refinery business getting more complex to manage and require high skill set and investment. Can we take this to be a reason for rationalizing number of players in the industry and probably cutting supplies, reduce oversupply, and maybe get better outlook for margins?
Wow, that's a very comprehensive and interesting question. Who is that from? Wafa, you said?
Wafa. She's from Kipik.
From Kipik. Well, Kipik is in the middle of this transformation that we're talking about. Yes, what it is going to become more complex. Many people who've grown up in the refining industry are finding it quite challenging to understand the petrochemical side of things. An ethylene plant and the downstream derivatives and polymers, that's more the chemical side of chemical engineering as opposed to petroleum engineering. So I think it is becoming more complex. You have to now, if you think about it, understand everything from the wellhead through gas plants, through midstream to refining, to crackers, ethylene crackers, downstream, further chemicals, intermediates, polymers. So you're going from liquids to solids in the end. The supply chain problems are very different as you make that transition from liquids to solids. The technologies are broadly the same, but you're going from continuous to batch. You're going from to discrete type things in the end, and the requirement to understand that integrated value chain is demanding, but it's exciting. And the second part of the question, will this lead to rationalization? Absolutely. I mean, SABIC and Aramco going together is just the first part. You look what's happening in Kuwait with Kipik as well. That's very much designed as an integrated petchem mega site that's going to set the pace for the next 10, 20 years in the region. I think what's exciting for the Middle East, look where all the investment has gone. I mean, Sadara at the time was the biggest single site investment, and that's now 10 years ago that Sadara was conceived and begun. We're now looking at COTC. The Middle East is poised to long-term be very, very profitable. I mean, clearly the short-term, the oil price down is impacting and the national economies. But in the longer term, you look in Western Europe, I mean, refineries are shutting down monthly just about, and will continue to now. And so more and more of the industry will shift to Middle East and the emerging countries, around Asia, and the Western world will reduce. So it's a very exciting time to be in the industry now as well.
We have one more question from Sator Amna, and she is asking what sort of aspects refiners need to consider during operating their plant for 2021, considering the COVID-19 domino extended to next year, and to preserve the refinery economics. So what sort of aspects refiners need to consider in operating their plant?
Similar to what I said before, but in particular, if I think of Santor, part of it is making, understanding from your marketing people what optionality you can have, because you've got a very capable plant. I mean, it's a large throughput, and if you can find ways to keep running at as high a throughput as possible, find new ways to get product to market. I'm not exactly fully aware of the some of the opportunities or constraints that SATORP has in terms of exporting. I think more and more is to try and export the product. Clearly, there's there's no shortage of feed availability. The question is optimizing, making sure that your planners and your marketing people are giving all the options to the plant. Like, you could sell more of this product and give you as wide open a set of demands to meet, so that within that you can decide which are the more profitable demands to meet. So select your final products for the obviously for their most profitable result, and then make sure that you can make those products and that your plant models are accurately tuned, so that when you do the planning based on the capability of those process units, you can actually meet those qualities and demands, and that will maximize the profitability. And I think in terms of maintenance, you want to defer maintenance as much as possible, unless you're in a situation where you can shut down for a while and it doesn't impact your ability to meet your product demands. But leveraging technology, managing to minimize downtime, again, is going to be critical. The last thing you want is additional areas where you're going to lose profitability during this situation.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Raj. Great discussion. Thank you. I'm satisfied with the answer. Thank you.
Rob, thank you very much for your kind, appearance and participation in our conversation and sharing your insight and valuable knowledge with our subject matter experts and the downstream players at large. Thank you, all the subject matter experts, for giving your time and patience. And I hope you would have gained something out of it, at least some food for thought. May not be the what future holds, but what you can think in terms of preparing for your future and whatever that future is. So thank you once again. And let me close by saying this series of GDA Conversations, we have been continuing for the last 3-4 months, and we have had many great conversations with the industry leaders. All of them are available on our website. So those who want to watch them, we highly recommend and welcome you to please come to our website and watch them and benefit. Now for this particular episode, those who are watching on YouTube, if you have any question from Rob, do let us know, do write to us, and we will try to get the answer to you from Rob. And with that, we once again thank you everyone for the time, and we wish you a safe and healthy future, and we wish that this pandemic and crisis will be behind us very soon. All the best. Thank you.